Let me ask you something. Right now, at this exact moment, somewhere on Earth, lightning is striking the ground about 100 times every single second. 100 times per second. The sun is sending enough energy to this planet in 1 hour to power every city, every phone, every factory, every light bulb on Earth for an entire year. From 1 hour. And meanwhile, somewhere, someone is digging coal out of the ground to make electricity. Now, I am not here to make anyone feel bad about that. I am here because the story of how humans are learning to capture that wild, incredible, free energy all around us is honestly one of the most fascinating stories ever told. And most people have never actually heard it properly. So today, we fix that. This is renewable energy, the real version. And I promise by the end of this video, you will never look at a sunny day, a windy afternoon, or a flowing river the same way again. Before we get into renewable energy, let's talk about energy itself. Because here is something wild. Energy cannot be created. It cannot be destroyed. It can only be converted from one form into another. That lightning bolt? It's just electrons moving. That campfire? Stored sunlight from decades ago, finally released. So when we talk about energy sources, what we are really asking is, what are we converting, and from where? Clear fossil fuels, coal, oil, gas. They are ancient organic matter compressed underground for hundreds of millions of years. They are energy dense, easy to store, easy to transport. That is genuinely impressive engineering from nature, and they got us incredibly far. Let's give credit where it's due. The modern world, hospitals, the internet, clean water systems, a lot of that was built on fossil fuel energy. That is just the truth. But here is the interesting question that engineers and scientists started asking. What if instead of digging up old stored energy, we learn to capture the energy that is happening right now, every single day, for free, all around us? So what exactly is renewable energy? Here is the simplest way I can put it. Imagine you have two bank accounts. The first account has a fixed amount of money in it, let's say $1 million. Every time you spend from it, the balance goes down. Nobody is adding more. Eventually, no matter how carefully you spend, it runs out. That is fossil fuels, millions of years of stored energy, finite supply, slowly being drawn down every single day. The second account? Every single morning a deposit arrives. You didn't ask for it. You can't stop it. Whether you use it or not, it shows up. Sunshine, wind, flowing water, heat from the Earth's core, the gravitational pull of the moon on the ocean tides. Renewable energy is learning to spend from that second account, the one that refills itself, automatically, every day, forever. And here is the beautiful part. We are not even close to spending the full daily deposit yet. We are barely scratching the surface of what is available. So let's go through every major source, because each one is its own fascinating story. Okay, solar energy. Let's start here because the numbers are almost impossible to believe. Quick question, and I genuinely want you to think about this for a second. How much of the sun's energy do you think actually reaches Earth's surface in a single day? Enough to power the entire planet's energy consumption for 27 years. From one day of sunshine, 27 years. Now we obviously cannot capture all of it. Clouds get in the way, night happens, geography matters. But even capturing a tiny fraction of that, and I mean tiny, changes everything. Solar energy works in two main ways. The first is called photovoltaic, or PV for short. This is what you see on rooftops and in those big fields that look like shimmering lakes from above. PV panels are made of semiconductor materials, usually silicon. When photons from sunlight hit the silicon, they knock electrons loose, and those moving electrons become electricity. Simple, elegant, physics. And the cost story of solar PV is one of the most remarkable economic stories of the last decade. In 2010, generating 1 watt of solar power cost about 76 cents. By 2023, less than 3 cents. A 96% cost reduction in 13 years. Nothing in energy history has ever moved that fast. The second solar technology is called concentrated solar power, CSP. Instead of panels, imagine thousands of giant mirrors arranged in a field, all angled to focus sunlight onto a single tower. That tower gets hot enough to melt salt. The molten salt stores that heat and uses it to boil water, spin a turbine and generate electricity, even hours after the sun has gone down. It is essentially a solar-powered steam engine, and it is spectacular. Now, real talk. Solar has genuine limitations. It only works when the sun is shining, which means storage is a real challenge. Cloudy regions get significantly less output. Manufacturing the panels does use energy and materials with their own environmental footprint, and large solar farms need significant land. But here is the thing about every single one of those limitations. They are active engineering problems being worked on right now by thousands of brilliant people around the world, and the progress is extraordinary. Wind energy. And here is something that might completely reshape how you think about wind forever. Wind is not really wind. Wind is sunlight. Seriously. When the sun heats different parts of the Earth's surface at different rates, land heats faster than oceans, equators heat faster than poles. It creates differences in air pressure, and air always moves from high pressure to low pressure. That movement is wind. So in a very real way, wind turbines are also solar power, just roundabout solar power. Now picture a modern wind turbine. The blades on a large turbine can be 80 meters long. That is longer than the wingspan of a Boeing 747. When the wind blows, those massive blades spin a shaft connected to a generator, and that spinning produces electricity. The engineering required to make that work reliably for 20 to 30 years in all weather conditions is genuinely extraordinary. There are two main types. Onshore wind, turbines built on land, typically in open plains or hilly areas where wind is reliable. And offshore wind, turbines built in the ocean, where wind is stronger, more consistent, and there is far more space available. Landing a fact. The Hornsea offshore wind farm off the coast of England is currently the world's largest. It can power over 1 million homes from wind in the ocean. Let that actually sink in for a moment. Think about that the next time you complain about a windy day. That wind is power, literally. The real limitations of wind, it is intermittent. No wind means no power. Not every location has the right wind conditions. Turbines do affect birds and bats. This is real, and the industry takes it seriously through careful site selection. And some communities genuinely dislike the visual impact, which is a completely fair concern. But because wind is intermittent, it pushes engineers to build smarter, more resilient power grids that combine multiple sources intelligently. Every limitation is quietly shaping a better solution. Hydropower. This one has been with us the longest, and it is still the world's largest source of renewable electricity today, providing about 16% of global power. Let that number sit for a second. 16% from water. Here is how it works. Water flows downhill, always. That is just gravity. Hydropower captures the energy in that movement. In a large dam, water is stored in a reservoir, then released in a controlled flow through turbines. The spinning turbines generate electricity. It is simple, reliable, and incredibly powerful. The Three Gorges Dam in China is the largest power station ever built by humans. It produces more electricity annually than most entire countries consume from a river. But there is a gentler version too, called run-of-river hydro. Instead of a massive dam and reservoir, it diverts part of a river's natural flow through smaller turbines, with far less disruption to the surrounding environment, less power, but also far less impact. Here is something most people do not know about hydro. It can act as a giant battery. By pumping water uphill when you have excess electricity from solar or wind, then releasing it back down through turbines when you need power, you have created what engineers call pumped hydro storage. It is currently the largest form of energy storage on Earth. Now the limitations, and they are significant. Large dams flood entire ecosystems. They displace communities. The Three Gorges Dam displaced over 1 million people. That is a real cost, and it deserves acknowledgement. Droughts are also increasingly threatening hydro output in many regions. And building large dams is enormously expensive. Hydropower is mature, powerful, and reliable, but it comes with genuine trade-offs that make it complicated. Understanding those trade-offs is part of understanding the full picture. Geothermal energy. This one does not get nearly enough attention, and once you understand it, you will wonder why. Right now, beneath your feet, the Earth's core sits at approximately 5,000 degrees Celsius. That is roughly the temperature of the surface of the Sun, and that heat has been radiating outward through the Earth's layers for 4.5 billion years. It is not going anywhere. Geothermal energy taps into that heat. In volcanic and tectonically active regions, that heat is close enough to the surface that we can drill down, bring it up as steam or hot water, and use it to spin turbines and generate electricity, or simply pipe the heat directly into homes and buildings for warmth. Iceland is the greatest example on the planet. Nearly 100% of Iceland's electricity and heating comes from geothermal and hydro. They have virtually no fossil fuel dependency. Their energy bills are among the lowest in the developed world, and they sit on one of the most volcanically active regions on Earth, so they decided to use it. Imagine a country with almost free, clean, infinite heat energy beneath it, and deciding to actually use it. That is Iceland. That is what smart energy policy looks like. The limitation, geothermal, is location-specific. It only works economically near tectonic boundaries, volcanic zones, and geothermal hotspots. You cannot build a geothermal plant in the middle of a stable continental plate and expect it to work. Upfront drilling costs are also significant, and in rare cases, deep drilling can trigger minor seismic activity if not managed carefully. But where geothermal works, it is arguably the most perfect energy source we have. Constant, silent, invisible, unlimited. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, regardless of weather. Biomass and bioenergy. This is where things get genuinely interesting and genuinely complicated. So let's be honest about both sides. Biomass energy comes from organic material, wood, agricultural waste, animal waste, dedicated energy crops, even algae. That material is either burned directly to produce heat and electricity, or converted into biogas through a biological process called anaerobic digestion, or processed into liquid fuels like ethanol and biodiesel. The core argument for biomass is this. When a tree burns, it releases carbon, but that carbon was pulled from the atmosphere while the tree was growing. So in theory, it is a closed carbon cycle. Grow a plant. It absorbs carbon. Burn it. Carbon returns. Grow another plant. Repeat. Net carbon, zero. And that logic holds under specific conditions. If you are burning genuine agricultural waste that would have decomposed anyway, Biomass makes a lot of sense. It is turning a problem into power. But when entire forests are being cut down and shipped across oceans to be burned in power plants, and this is actually happening in Europe right now, the carbon cycle argument starts to break down. Forests take decades to regrow. The carbon released today is in the atmosphere today. That timing matters. Biomass is genuinely useful in a thoughtful energy transition, particularly for industries that are hard to electrify, like aviation biofuels and industrial heat. But it requires careful, honest management. It is a tool, not a silver bullet. Tidal and wave energy. And this is where we get into something that most people have never even thought about, and it is absolutely fascinating. The ocean covers over 70% of the Earth's surface. It is in constant motion, waves rolling in, tides rising and falling, currents flowing through underwater channels. That is an almost unimaginable amount of kinetic energy, and we are barely touching it. Tidal energy works by placing turbines in locations where tidal currents are strong, underwater channels, estuaries, coastal passages. As the tide comes in and goes out, it spins the turbines. Simple in concept, brilliant in practice. And here is the thing that makes tidal energy genuinely special compared to every other renewable source. Because tides are governed by the gravitational pull of the moon, they are completely predictable, not just tomorrow, not just next year. Scientists can predict tidal patterns decades, even centuries in advance. That predictability is something solar and wind can only dream of. Wave energy is slightly different. It captures the up and down and back and forth motion of ocean waves using specially designed floating devices. The technology is still in earlier stages compared to solar and wind, but countries like Portugal, Scotland, and Australia are investing seriously. The potential is enormous. The limitations: salt water is brutally corrosive. Maintenance in the ocean is expensive and difficult. The technology is still maturing, and connecting offshore systems to onshore power grids adds cost and complexity. But the fundamentals are solid, and the innovation happening right now is genuinely exciting. And now, the one that might be the most important of all, and the one that most people have barely heard of yet: green hydrogen. Here is a challenge that has been bothering energy engineers for years. Batteries are great for storing a few hours of electricity, but what about storing energy for days, weeks, months? What about powering a cargo ship across the Pacific? What about making steel, which requires enormous industrial heat? What about long-haul aviation? Batteries cannot do those things. Not yet. Maybe not ever at the scale required. Green hydrogen might be the answer. Here is how it works. You take renewable electricity from solar or wind. You use it to pass an electrical current through water. Water is H2O, 2 hydrogen atoms, 1 oxygen atom. The electrical current splits them apart. The oxygen goes into the air. The hydrogen you keep. That hydrogen is now a fuel. You can store it, transport it in pipelines, burn it in turbines, use it in fuel cells to power vehicles. And when it is used, the only byproduct is water, not carbon dioxide, not particulates, water. The reason governments around the world are racing to invest in green hydrogen is because it could solve the hardest part of the energy transition, the parts that electricity alone cannot reach: aviation, shipping, steel, cement, chemical production. These industries represent a massive portion of global emissions. Green hydrogen could be their solution. But, and this is important, green hydrogen right now is expensive. The process of splitting water uses significant energy, and you lose some of that energy in the conversion. The infrastructure for storing and transporting hydrogen safely is still being built. The costs need to come down substantially, But here is what is already true. The countries and companies that figure out green hydrogen first will have an extraordinary economic and strategic advantage. That race is already underway, and it is one of the most important technological competitions happening on Earth right now. Okay, we have covered credible sources of renewable energy, and I hope you are starting to feel what I feel when I think about all of this, which is genuine excitement about what human ingenuity is building. But I promised you the real version, not the sales pitch, so let's talk honestly about where we actually are right now. Renewable energy has real challenges. Intermittency is the biggest one. The sun does not always shine, the wind does not always blow, and the grid needs power every single second of every day. Right now, when renewables cannot deliver, other sources fill the gap. That is just the current reality. Energy storage, batteries and other solutions are improving rapidly, but we do not yet have cheap large-scale storage at the level the full grid requires. That gap is one of the most important engineering problems being solved right now. Large-scale renewable energy needs land. Solar farms, wind turbines, tidal installations, they all require space. And the materials needed to build them, silicon, lithium, cobalt, rare earth elements, have their own supply chain and mining challenges that deserve honest attention. And the energy transition will change employment. Communities built around coal mining, oil refining, gas production, they are facing real disruption. Acknowledging that honestly and planning for it thoughtfully is part of doing this transition well. So why, knowing all of that, is this transition still happening? And why is it accelerating? Because renewable energy is now the cheapest form of new electricity generation in most of the world. That is not an environmental argument, that is an economic one. When something is cheaper and better, markets move toward it. And they are. The challenges are real, the solutions are being built, and the direction of travel is clear. This is not a question of if anymore. It is a question of how fast and who shapes it. I want to tell you why I made this channel, because I kept noticing something. The energy transition is one of the most important stories unfolding on Earth right now, and it was being told either as doom and catastrophe or as perfect utopian fantasy. Nobody was just sitting down and explaining it honestly, completely, fascinatingly. For people who genuinely want to understand, that is what peak renewable energy is. Every single week we go deep on one piece of this story. New technologies, real economics, honest breakthroughs and honest setbacks. We follow the energy wherever it actually leads. Now, I asked you at the beginning of this video to think about where your electricity actually comes from. Do you have a different answer now? A more complete one? If you do, that is the point. Understanding this transition is not just interesting, it is genuinely useful for how you think about the world, about your career, about your community, about the future. If you want to keep going deeper, subscribe. Hit the bell. Every video we make will give you something real, something worth knowing, and drop a comment below. Tell me which energy source from today surprised you the most. I read every single comment. I genuinely do. Welcome to Peak Renewable Energy. This is just the beginning.